And welcome to episode 366 of Geektown Radio. I'm back this week with... Ray, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thanks. I was a little bit late, but Happy New Year's. My first one since the turn of the year. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there last week to hear you go through all the winners of the awards. This first fortnight has been madness.
Yes, I imagine it would be. Such is the way for teachers. Yes. Apart from being run around at school, what else have you been up to?
Well, that's it, just being so busy. We had a couple of really big events. I still haven't written my full article, but last weekend I was up at DragCon. So yes. We've hardly watched any television, and I've just come back from a weekend in Manchester. Right. So actually my list is quite short, but I finished Kaleidoscope, which I think is the talked about TV show that probably isn't being talked about enough. I was sold it by word of mouth, and then I saw lots of promo about it, and then it just completely died a death. So it's the heist drama that can be watched in any order, and Netflix serves it to you in a specific order as long as you finish on white.
Right.
I watched that. I was really intrigued. I really liked it. I started watching it, and then my partner came in and went, "Oh, I wanted to watch that." I went, "Well, that's great. We can watch it in any order." So watch with me now, and then go back and watch the ones you've missed. And he did, and he said you could see how the story could be created. We argued a little bit, not like violent, but we discussed in depth how some episodes suited being better placed later in the narrative. But it's interesting to hear that it's going to be an ongoing anthology, and it is going to possibly come back. Well, let's not talk about Netflix in that. But possibly if it gets recommissioned, it'll come back with a completely different cast and completely different storyline. But the idea is, again, another story that can be watched in multiple ways. So that was a really good start to the year. Have you caught it yet, Dave?
I haven't, no. It's on my list of things that I need to get to. But yeah, it does sound like a really interesting idea. It's got a really good cast in it as well, because it's Giancarlo Esposito in one of the lead roles in it, isn't it? So yeah, it does sound like a really interesting idea. And the reviews I've seen for it have been really good, despite the fact that it comes across as a somewhat gimmicky premise.
Yeah. So yeah, I enjoyed that. And then at the very turn of the new year, something I'd been holding on to for quite a few months, I finished Bad Sisters, and I'm gutted I didn't watch it sooner. Absolutely fantastic. A sort of ending to that. I think when I did the awards, my nominations for the best sort of characters and things like that with Entertainment Talk, I hadn't fully watched the last 3 episodes, and I got through them on New Year's Day, and oh my word, Clay Spang is an absolutely horrendous person as a character. He's a fantastic actor, but the man he plays is the most vile character ever, and he did it so well. Really good. I hear they've been commissioned for a second season because Apple commissioned people, but I'm not quite sure where they're going to go with it. Now they've lost their central antagonist. I imagine a new antagonist is going to come along, so I'd be really interested in seeing that. That's all I finished, really. Apart from a couple of entertainment shows, those are the big ones I finished. I've started so many, or I'm 6 or 7 episodes into some, that it's going to take me a while to finish them. So I started the first episode of Our Flag Means Death. I know we're going to talk about that in a moment with you. Yeah. I'm 4 episodes into Romantic Getaway, which is Catherine and Ramesh. Death in Paradise, Treason, I'm an episode in. Happy Valley, 1 episode in. CSI Vegas, first couple of episodes of the new season. Yeah. And American Horror Story NYC, I think we just watched 8, and I believe there's 10, so 2 more left with that. And I'm just going to say, I've got this dream watch list of all this stuff that keeps being pushed, and it's only week 3 in January. And so my question to you, Dave, is you obviously know my relationship with sci-fi and fantasy and all these sorts of things to do with gaming. Do I start The Last of Us? Because everyone's talking about it like I should.
Yes, I would say definitely yes, you should watch it. I mean, if you're somebody who just enjoys good drama, yes, obviously it's got a sci-fi element of it. I'd ignore the fact that it's even based on a video game because it's so far removed from being based on a video game. Then, I mean, it's one of those things that is a great adaptation of the game, but equally is a superb TV show as well. Matt did a sort of review at like 3 a.m. this morning after he'd sort of watched it when it got released. One of the comments he made was, "This is the one." And it is. If you're ever going to watch a video game adaptation, this is the one I'd watch. It's superb. Not because it's a video game adaptation, it's just a brilliantly well-constructed, well-acted, wonderfully cast, beautiful story, which happens to be about a pandemic, essentially. Because although it is a kind of a zombie show, the zombies are infected in the same way if you've ever watched 28 Days Later or 28 Weeks Later. That was sort of a zombie thing, but it was about an infection rather than and in this case, the infected are infected by a mutated fungus. I mean, they actually open the episode by doing it's a sort of talk show set in, I don't know, it's 1960 something. So it's sort of an old TV talk show. And just the level of quality of actor that they threw away for that little opening scene. It's a TV show set in the 60s with, like, you know, two experts discussing pandemics. And one of them's talking about how viruses are the bigger threat. And then the other one is talking about how a mutated fungus could be particularly dangerous, or a mutated sort of mycelial thing could be particularly dangerous. And the three actors that they chuck in that, Christopher Heimdall, who you'll know from the Twilight films, he was in Stargate Atlantis, he popped up in Smallville on a couple of episodes. Sanctuary he played John Druitt in Sanctuary. That was one of the big things he's been in. He's in Chapelwaite at the moment. He was in Peacemaker. So he's done a lot of these sort of roles. The other one was John Hannah.
Oh, okay.
And they're playing the two experts. And you're like, that's quite high levels of actor to just casually throw away on an opening scene, never to be seen again. You know?
Wow.
So,
well, you know, thinking of gaming, this year was the year I watched Arcane because someone suggested it, and I was like, oh, it's gaming, be warned, I'm not, I don't think, and they were like, oh, just give it a try. And I really enjoyed it. But so many people have been talking about this, and I've been going around in my head like, should I watch it? And I'm thinking, I've got so much that I want to watch. Like I've got an hour tonight, and I've got the evening tomorrow night where I've got the TV to myself, and I'm thinking, do I use one of those hours to give this a go? And that's my sort of quandary at the moment, because I don't want to start something and really dislike it from the off when it might be quite popular amongst a lot of people. Now I'm going to be that awkward one in the corner going, oh, I didn't really like it.
I would say yes. I mean, it is got horror elements to it, obviously, because of the genre it is, but it's so well put together. Craig Mazin is phenomenal in the writing and directing of it. Neil Druckmann, who's the person that wrote the games, is also involved in it. The acting is fantastic. Pedro Pascal plays Joel, who is the main lead. Bella Ramsey plays Ellie, who is the other lead, and she is phenomenal in this. She playing Ellie's sort of supposed to be 14. I think Bella's actually closer to 17, 18, but really works as Ellie in this. And those are the two main characters, basically, throughout. I've actually seen the first 3 episodes so far because they've got some press things for it, and it continues to be superb. So there are a few time jumps in that first episode as they sort of introduce how the pandemic spread, basically. But honestly, there are going to be a lot of people talking about it. I've yet to see a negative review about this show.
Okay, so watch this space. When I'm next on, I may well be talking about it then. So I am going to put it on my list, and either tomorrow night or an hour tonight, after I finish this podcast, I may put it on.
Yes, I would definitely take a look at it. How was DragCon, by the way?
So it was a fantastic opportunity to go, and I was really, really appreciative of the tickets that we got. And as I experienced it, and it's like absolutely incredible what you could see, it very much is for the drag enthusiast in terms of you potentially are going to be a drag queen.
Right.
So if you are a very hardcore fan of all the Drag Rage franchises, including the French, Italians, all the European spin-offs, you would have had an amazing time, but you would also need deep pockets.
Right.
So, and I get that with any convention. I kept comparing it to, for listeners know, I'm a runner as well. So I've been to running conventions before where you could buy anything from shoes to tape to massage gels. And I get that if you're not a runner and you walk into a convention like that, you wouldn't spend money and you might complain that it seems costly and expensive to do a lot of things. But I think when you get to DragCon, you can buy wigs and heels and dresses and nails and makeup and that, and they're all quite costly. But to meet some of the bigger names is where you're really digging into your pockets.
Well, yes.
And that's expected. You could have fun if you go there with that understanding. And that's pretty much what I'm going to be writing in my review for Geektown, is that it's a great opportunity to go, but you must go there prepared. I think January post-Christmas is quite an expensive sort of day out, weekend out even. And that's going to be part of my reflection. But I can't fault what some of them are doing. And some of the queens were fantastic.
Right.
But Dave, my highlight, I met two of the traitors. I met Amanda from the Traitors. I met Kieran. And then on the Sunday, as I was leaving, we were heading off back into town, I met Maddie. And I was like, oh my God. I came for drag queens. I left with all the photos with the Traitors. They are really getting their followers, and they knew exactly where to go to get the right followers. And they're at the point Amanda was about to come out on the Saturday, their queue was longer than many of the UK drag queens.
Oh, wow.
The people had to come out and curve Amanda's queue round, and these poor UK and a couple of Canadian queens were looking along to go, what's happening? Why have this huge queue? Which drag queens come out? And it was a lovely Welsh estate agent coming to do her little meet and greets as well. But no, that was brilliant. I'll try and avoid putting that into my review because my review
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same with any convention in terms of the guest signing stuff. I mean, some of the amounts of money that some of the guests charge are absolutely insane. It's the same with any Comic-Con, so I would expect it to be the same with DragCon as well. But interesting that is what happened. But I'm glad you got to meet the traitors like that. That's awesome.
What have you been watching, Dave?
Well, Vikings Valhalla Season 2, I am working my way through at the moment. I've not quite got to the end of that yet, but I've seen some sort of negative reviews of the second season. I'm quite enjoying it. There's not as many huge battle sequences in the second season as I think there were in the first. There's a lot more character building sort of stuff, I think. I mean, there are some good fight sequences and things in there, but I think maybe they didn't go quite as all action. It sort of feels like half of a season. It feels like the setup for a bigger action season next season, if that makes sense, which is fine if you are splitting them into one season into two halves, which they did quite a lot with the last few seasons of the original Viking series. But it's trickier to do with this because it's on Netflix. So if you lose your audience by your second season, that's it. You're probably done. So we'll see whether that comes back or not. I'm not sure whether that's got renewed yet or not. I don't think it has. I'm enjoying it, though. It is a good sort of continuation of the original Vikings. I don't think the characters are quite as strong as the original show. They were far bigger, larger than life characters, I think, on that original series, and I don't think it's quite got that level with this second season. You want to see slightly more sort of established people that you're following, they've got King Canute in there, but he's sort of barely in it. And I think possibly the mistake they made was following the names that people don't recognize as much, possibly. I don't know. It's, as I say, the reviews have been iffy, I think, for that. So we'll see whether that comes back. Our Flag Means Death, I have finished the entire first season of that. I really enjoyed that show. It's a wonderfully fun, half-hour, very silly pirate comedy. You've only watched the first episode so far, did you say?
I have, yeah. I watched it in bed the other night and I was like, I'm going to enjoy this, but it was obviously very late at night when I was watching it, so it went off and then the weekend happened. So it's probably going to be something I'll be tuning into this week.
Definitely worth watching. It is really good fun. It's incredibly well written. It's created by a guy called David Jenkins, who did People of Earth. That was the other sort of big show that he did. Taika Waititi is in the show. He's not the main character. Rhys Darby is the main character, Steed Bonnet. Taika plays Blackbeard, so in which I don't think will have shown up in the first episode.
No, I haven't seen him yet. I just saw Rory Kinnear. It was a great appearance.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, Rory Kinnear pops up a number of times. There are some great names in it. You've got Con O'Neill in there as well, who plays Izzy, who is Blackbeard's right hand, basically, who is one of those faces you will probably recognise from, he was in Uncle, one of the shows that I recognise him from, and he was in Chernobyl as well. So he's been in some sort of decent things. Ewan Bremner is in there, who you'll know from Train Spotting. Samson Kayo, he's in there. Christian Nahn as well. Gus Kahn pops up. They've got some really good British talent in there as well. So it's a great cast. It's very, very funny. It ends up being a lot about this relationship between sort of Steed and Blackbeard. I really, really enjoyed the first season. It's all up on iPlayer, so you can go and watch it, but very, very well worth going to check that out as well. I also finished The Rig, which is the Prime Video series, which I'd started watching last week. It's only 6 episodes, I think. This is the thing about them all being out on an oil rig. Fog rolls in, it blocks them off from the mainland, and then weird stuff starts to happen on the oil rig. I did wonder whether that was going to be a sort of one and done series, but they definitely leave it quite open-ended. So I don't know whether that's going to come back. I don't think it has officially been renewed yet or not, so we'll see. But I found it enjoyable. Again, some people, I think the reviews have been quite mixed on that, I think, but I rather enjoyed it. It's got sci-fi-esque element to it, or a sort of supernatural-esque element to it, although it is somewhat like Fortitude, the Sky Atlantic series, in that the sort of supernaturalness and weirdness is grounded in some form of pseudoscience reality, if that makes sense.
Okay. So, yeah.
I quite enjoyed the first season of that, so that's on Prime Video. Ongoing, I'm working my way through the first season of Ghost US, which I'm really quite enjoying. It is very similar, obviously, to the British one with an American twist, but those American twists do help quite a lot. Not that there's anything wrong with the British show, because the British show is brilliant and hilarious, but I think they've made enough tweaks to it for it to be enjoyable to watch, even though it's a repeat of some of the UK stories.
Yeah, they've crammed a lot of them into the first few episodes of the US one. Yeah. But as it extended out, so I remember when I did my first chat with you, I think I was on like episode 6 or 8, and as it extended out, it did start exploring some slightly extended and developed stories, which I thought was better. So it wasn't complete copy, and so therefore they're bringing their stories out a little bit further so that it can last longer. I'll be interested to see. I think my last like cynical element to it was like in the US, casts revolve so quickly. How might they deal with that? So I'll be interested to see before the cast return for future seasons.
Yeah, I can sort of see that. I mean, they've had a lot of shows where a lot of the cast stay around. I mean, you know, that central kind of core cast. Look at Friends. Yeah, you know, I think you can keep the core cast around for the entire run. It's just what you do in terms of sort of adding extra bits and pieces on. But I am really rather enjoying that. I mean, I still like the British show a lot and think that is possibly the superior one. But I think the US have done a really, really good adaptation of it, and it works very, very well. Definitely feels more like an American comedy, but if you like American comedies, then great. It's very, very enjoyable. And The Last of Us, as we mentioned, is the other thing that I started watching. First episode is heartbreakingly fantastic and well worth going to check out. If you want to know more about The Last of Us, we are covering it over on Entertainment Talk with Matt, so you can go and check that out. We did a preview podcast. He's done a sort of first thoughts podcast as well, and we'll be doing it on Wednesday, so that will go out later this week. So go and check out the World of The Last of Us podcast over on entertainmenttalk.org. So you go and find that over there. That's all the stuff we've been doing this week. Let's move on to some TV and film news. So we kick off the TV and film news with quite a few cancellations this week. It's been the winter press tour in the US, which is why there was quite a lot of TV news come out, things being renewed and cancelled and stuff. First one was Mayans. Mayans MC is ending with season 5, which I haven't actually watched that show for a while. I watched a few episodes of the first season and then just never went back to it. And I mean, I loved Sons of Anarchy. I just didn't really grab me in the same way, unfortunately. But Mayans is coming to an end with its 5th season, they've said. So that will be ending. Uncoupled is one of the many shows that is now cancelled at Netflix. That was a show which starred Neil Patrick Harris, so that won't be coming back. They've also canned Dead End Paranormal Park, which has ended after 2 seasons, and Inside Job they've cancelled as well, which had originally been renewed for a 2nd season. They've now dropped that, so that is no longer coming back. So Netflix out with the cancellation hatchet once again. I don't know whether you watched any of those. I hadn't caught any of them.
I'd watched Uncoupled. It was quite a good, safe sitcom. I say safe. It was doing something very similar to what Emily in Paris is doing. Like, I don't watch Emily in Paris, my partner does, and I'm taught that he was like, it was absolutely comparable to that, but obviously it has a different storyline. It had cliffhangers, so it had something that it could have gone on to a season 2, but never going to see that now. Gutted. I love Neil Patrick Harris. Anything he does, really, I enjoy watching. But yeah, disappointing.
Yeah.
Disappointing Netflix, but you know, I'm one in thousands who are disappointed in Netflix right now.
Yes, very much so. I mean, the amount of cancellations, we did talk quite a bit about the Netflix cancellation stuff, and they've got a real problem because it's getting to the point now where people just don't trust having shows on Netflix. And it means when you launch your show on Netflix, unless it's something really, really massive, it's whether you actually risk watching the first season if there is a likelihood it's going to get canned. I don't know what they do about that other than trying to sort of commit to making more seasons of shows when they order them. Because that is becoming a real problem, because the amount of people that I've seen that have said, I really don't trust watching Netflix anymore because they cancel so much stuff. So what's the point in getting into something? Yeah. Uncoupled was by the same people that did Emily in Paris as well. So
interesting that they're continuing to give orders to that one. So
yeah, so I say they seem to just be sort of some overreaching algorithm that basically says no, and it said no to some things which have been hanging around in the top 10 for however long, either in the US or the UK. It's one of those things that if it doesn't hit in every market, they seem to be just like, nope, that's been cancelled. It's very strange. I don't know what they're using to sort it out, but it's not good. Over on AMC, Fear the Walking Dead is ending with its 8th season, they've said, which fair enough. I'm still a bit behind on that. I've got season 7 to watch. Dead City, they've also said, is coming in June 2023. Daryl Dixon will be later in 2023, and the Rick and Michonne series will be sometime early in 2024. So that's the Walking Dead universe. It's going to be interesting going back to watching that after having watched Last of Us, because not there's anything really wrong with the Walking Dead quality of the show. You know, it's not, I don't think, going to be to the level of sort of watching something like Peacemaker and then going back to watching The Flash. I mean, there are marked differences between those two superhero shows, but it's 2 zombie-esque shows. But the level of drama in Last of Us compared to the sort of soapiness of Walking Dead is going to be sort of an interesting comparison, I think. Minx, which is a show which ran on HBO Max and they cancelled it, has now been picked up by Starz for a first, and I think it was one of those shows where they'd either got commissioned for the 2nd season or they'd filmed the 2nd season and HBO decided to ditch it and just write it off. They've now sold that all over onto Starz. Weirdly, it airs on Paramount Plus over here, so just to confuse things completely.
I think I've heard about this one. Yeah, about the female porn industry.
Yes, it's sort of set in I think it's set in the 70s, and it's about the first woman to set up a sort of porn magazine, I think is the basis of it. But that's now been picked up by Stars in the US. Whether that will change where it airs in the UK, I don't know. So we'll see. But it'll be in Stars in the US now. Another weird Warner Brothers Discovery decision. Snowpiercer, the final season, has been dropped by TNT, which is owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. The people that make it, which is Tomorrow Studios, who are ITV owned randomly, are going to be shopping it elsewhere. So they're trying to find a new place to show it in the US. It's always aired on Netflix over here. Whether that will be delay season 4 coming out on Netflix, or whether Netflix pick it up globally, maybe, I don't know. But at the time of the announcement, production was already underway on the final batch of episodes. I think they'd actually filmed pretty much all of it. It's another one where they filmed everything and Warner Brothers just turned around and said no. So this weird thing of sort of writing off seasons which have already been made, which they've started recently, is very, very strange. I mean, I really enjoyed the first 3 seasons of that, and given it's the final season, it seems very harsh for the American audiences that have been watching it for 3 seasons on TNT that they're now told they're not going to be getting the final season and they're going to have to look somewhere else for it. It's really quite harsh. But that's Warner Brothers at the moment, so we'll have to see whether that lands over here. Did you ever catch any of that? Because that was a really good...
I watched the film ahead of the first season coming on, because I'd always been fascinated by the film and its really controversial release rights over in the UK.
Right.
And then when the series got commissioned and I heard about it, I remember sat here during lockdown and I finally got hold of the film on Amazon and watched it, and I absolutely loved the film. And then I got about 5 episodes into the series and something just didn't click for me. I just wasn't enjoying it, so I gave up on it and never went back to it.
Fair enough. I really enjoyed the series. It takes the concept of the film and pushes it in a slightly different direction, which I rather like what they did with that to enable them to turn it into a sort of series, because it would usually have come back around now, and with it not going out on TNT, it will sort of depend where it ends up in America and whether that stops Netflix from showing it over here. I don't know, because they've been the global partner for it, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. And the other news which dropped today, it looks like Jeremy Clarkson's deal with Amazon is coming to an end after his various controversial statements in The Sun recently. He's not going to disappear immediately. They've still got 4 more specials to do with the Grand Tour, which they're already commissioned for, and there is a 3rd season of Clarkson's Farm on the way after season 2. So apparently that is all coming, but they're not renewing the contract with him after that. So the Grand Tour, I think, is probably done following those specials, and Clarkson's Farm will be done as well unless it gets sold somewhere else, but I don't necessarily see that happening. So yes, we'll see what he does next, but that seems to be it for now. Moving on to the renewals, we have better news with Criminal Minds Evolution. That's renewed for a 2nd season or 17th, depending on how you're counting. That's on Paramount Plus in the USA, airs on Disney Plus in the UK because it is made by ABC Signature, I think, make it, so that's why it's on Disney over here. That will be coming back, so this is a good one for Criminal Minds fans. Ghost US has been renewed for a 3rd season by CBS, which isn't really a surprise to anybody because it has been a massive hit for them. All American renewed for a 6th season, which is the first scripted drama renewed under the new regime over at the CW in the US, so that will be coming back. Mo has been renewed for a 2nd and final season on Netflix, so that is coming back, but at least they've given it a final season rather than just canned it. Grownish renewed for a 6th season at Freeform, so that's coming back. Abbott Elementary, that's got a season 3 renewal at ABC, so that will be back on Disney Plus as well. I know you really enjoy that show, so that one's coming back as well. But that's no great surprise. It won like 5 Golden Globes or something over the weekend, I think.
So many awards, yeah.
He's raking up awards, that, so that will be coming back. Billy the Kid has scored a 2nd season renewal, which is on MGM Plus, which was Epix in the US, but is now called MGM Plus. So that's been renewed. I'm hoping that lands somewhere over here because it's from Michael Hurst, who's the guy that made Vikings. And this 1st season seems to have gone down well enough for them to renew it. So I would like that to land somewhere because I think that could be quite good. Pitch Perfect Bumper in Berlin, that's got a 2nd season renewal at Peacock. Chucky has been renewed for a third season by Sci-Fi in the US, and Reginald the Vampire has been renewed for a second season by Sci-Fi in the US as well. Both of those, I think, are on Sky Sci-Fi in the UK. Those will both be coming back for new seasons as well. In pickups and other news, we have an air date finally for the Luther movie, which is under title. It's called The Fallen Sun, but that's coming on the 10th of March on 2023. They've not really released anything trailer-wise for that. It's got Andy Serkis in it, who seems to be playing the main antagonist for it. Are you a Luther fan?
I loved Luther. I had to write loads of educational resources on it, so I'm absolutely happy that that's coming back again, because I had to watch that first season about 6 times.
Wow. Yes, that is good news. Yes, that's returning. That'll be a film, not a season, but yes, it's going to be Idris Elba back as Luther, and Andy Serkis is playing the sort of villain role by the looks of things in that as well, so that's good. The Chicagos now have a premiere date, the 27th of January. They're landing on Sky Witness. They had a few contract things to sort out, which is why they're a little bit later than maybe they would have been normally, but that's Med kicking things off at 8 p.m, Fire at 9 p.m, and PD at 10 p.m. That's 27th of January for those. Bit of Star Trek news as well. Star Trek Discovery spin-off about Section 31 starring Michelle Yeoh. That is apparently still in development in Paramount, despite the fact that Michelle Yeoh is very much in demand at the moment. They are still managing to try and get her back for that, but it is still working in development because that's been sort of pretty much in development since about season 2, I think, of Star Trek Discovery, and they're on season 4 or 5 now. But it's being described as Mission Impossible meets Guardians of the Galaxy in space, which I find fascinating. So I'm quite looking forward to that. Michelle Yeoh's great in that role, as well as the sort of Empress turned good guy, kind of. I really, really like that show. So quite glad that that's coming. And Star Trek Picard Season 3 may not be the final season. I mean, they're out promoting it at the moment, obviously, as the final season, and it is going to have all the original Next Generation people. There is some quotes from the guys behind it saying, when we started the series, Patrick and we all talked about really wanting to just do 3 years, feeling that we could tell a really complete story with the season, and now you're seeing our endpoint. But that being said, anything is possible. If a show blows the doors off the place, as we're certainly hoping it will, we're very, very proud of season 3, so who knows? I see a lot of people saying, oh, well, that means they may do more of it. I rather get the feeling that it's more likely that what they'll probably do is they may go, okay, well, let's do a Geordie LaForge series, or let's do a Riker series, or let's do a Worf series. So they may do 3 seasons with Picard and then focus on one of the other Next Generation cast. I think that's a more likely situation rather than trying to get Patrick Stewart to come back and do even more. I mean, he may kind of do bit parts in some of those things, but I rather suspect he might not come back and do a full season because, I mean, he's not getting any younger at this point. And I mean, much as I would love to have him back to do more, I kind of think that he probably won't, and they'll do this as a sort of swan song, but maybe we'll get some of the other Next Generation cast back. We'll see. Moving on to other bigger news, there is a live-action Dungeons & Dragons series which has been ordered from E1 and Paramount. It's Paramount Plus in the US that has ordered it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it'll land on Paramount Plus over here. It may do, it may not, but given that E1 are involved, they sometimes get the international rights and sell them wherever they like, so we'll see. It's Rawson Marshall Thumber, who is the person behind it, who was the filmmaker behind Red Notice. I mean, Dungeons & Dragons, I'm sure you all know what Dungeons & Dragons is, tabletop role-playing game, but it's been given an 8-episode series order, and Rawson Marshall Thumber wrote the pilot and directed the first episode. He also was the person that wrote and directed Skyscraper and Dodgeball, the true underdog story as well. We don't know what elements that they're going to take from it. We don't know exactly what direction they're going to go with. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, which is the movie that's coming out later this year, very much has a sort of fun, slightly more comedy action element to it. because I've seen quite a lot of bits and pieces and clips and trailers for that, because we interviewed some of the people involved in it, Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, who were the screenwriters behind Spider-Man Homecoming. That's their film. And they really got the sort of fun vibe to D&D, which a lot of people have tried to treat it like high fantasy, and I think that's a mistake. You need to treat it with comedy. I think you need a bit more of that kind of comedic edge in there, because that's how people play it. So I'm quite looking forward, certainly, to the film. We'll see what they do with the TV show, but I think live action Dungeons and Dragons TV series could be quite good fun. Any interest in that?
No particular interest, never been a Dungeons and Dragons, apart from the really random, out the top of my head, the 90s cartoon that I think I used to watch on a half-term morning at 9:25. I can see this being put. I've seen a lot of promo with the poster being all over the place for the actual film. Yeah. And I think if that picks up enough interest, then this is going to get a full order, I imagine. I think if they're looking for a revival of something along that vein, I think it could possibly do well if the movie does well. We've also got to remember with the recent Henry Cavill notice that Warhammer's on its way as well.
Yeah.
So these games are getting their moment, I believe, and we just got to be careful that it doesn't become a saturation and we get some quality out of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be a marked difference between something like Warhammer 40,000 and Dungeons and Dragons, because I think Warhammer will have a slightly more serious edge to it, whereas D&D, I think there is a uniqueness to D&D which you can play around with it being slightly more comedy, and I think it's harder to do that with Warhammer 40k, and Warhammer 40k is sort of more futuristic, whereas this is going to be proper sort of fantasy stuff. It'd be interesting to see what they do with this, but I am quite looking forward to it. It could be quite good fun. There was some casting news as well for Frasier, which been ordered. I think this is Paramount Plus as well that have ordered this. There is a new Fraser series coming, which takes Kelsey Grammer as Frasier, moves him to a new city with new challenges to face, new relationships to forge, and an old dream or two to fulfill is the setup for it. So they've cast two people in it. Part of the reason for doing this, I feel very much like one of them is kind of a replacement for Niles, because David Hyde Pierce decided that he didn't want to come back and do it. There was a quote from him saying, you know, that whole time in my life doing Frasier is deeply important to me, and I would never disrespect it in such a way of just offhandedly saying, oh no thanks, I'm not going to do that again, it's too valuable to me. But at the same token, it's so valuable to me that I wouldn't want to just do it for doing it. I believe it can be done without me finding new stories to tell in the same way that Frasier did after Cheers. And the writers of the new show have sort of echoed that and said the fact that they're not going to have Niles back did give them different places to go as well. So that's one character that's going to be missing. The other one is John Mahoney. He plays the father, sadly passed away in 2018. So you've not got him as well. So they're sort of, I think, trying to fill those gaps in Frasier's kind of makeup. One of the people that they've picked up is Nicholas Linghurst, which
I would not have guessed this.
Oh, really? No, neither would I. He's playing Alan Cornwell, who's a university professor who's an old college friend of Frasier's. British, boozy and larger than life, Alan is an intellect on a par with Frasier's, if only he ever felt like using it. Alan's mischievous streak might be just what Frasier could use to shake up his routine, while Frasier's thoughtful guidance might help Alan to find some of the direction that he's been missing in his own life. So that sounds like it might have some of the sort of dad stuff in there mixed in with some of the Niles stuff. There's that in there. And then Jake Cutmore Scott is also joining the show, who you might know from Kingsman and Deception. He's described as charming and handsome. Frasier's son, Freddie, is a nuanced combination of his father and grandfather. Years ago, Freddie rejected following his father's footsteps, dropping out of college to become a fireman, and he's never looked back until now, when recent troubles have left him with nobody to turn to in his life. If they can overcome past differences, Freddie and Frasier might finally have a chance to repair old wounds. So again, again, that's got some elements of the dad figure in there as well, I think, albeit in a father-son relationship again, but with Fraser being the father. So, yeah, I think that there are kind of a couple of interesting bits of casting. What's your background with Fraser?
I really like it. It wasn't something that I watched every morning, but like if it was on, I remember I would just tune in because I really didn't mind it at all. When I saw the Nicholas Lyndhurst casting, I genuinely had to read the article twice to make sure I was indeed reading the right article. I was like, what? A complete left field casting.
Yeah.
Nicholas himself hasn't been doing it in a few years. I remember a few years ago, he sadly lost his son, and that was in the press a lot. And he's obviously, I thought he'd semi-retired from acting, but I think could be a potentially good return for him. He had some great sitcom pieces of work, especially Goodnight Sweetheart, which was obviously his biggest one post Only Fools and Horses. And he did New Tricks, I think he did. He appeared in that with Dennis Waterman. Yeah. And, you know, he's a good actor. So I'm really pleased to see him coming back on screen. I could potentially give this a go. I'm the sort of person, if I was going to give it a go, I'd have to go back and watch some Frasers to get myself into the mood, I think. So, yeah, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of the same as you. I didn't watch every episode of it, but I've watched quite a lot of Frasier, you know, from that sort of era. So I'm familiar with it and I'm sort of familiar with the setup. I wasn't a sort of religious viewer of it, but I think that was a really kind of interesting bit of casting. And it would be nice to have Nick Lyndhurst back on screen with sort of some regularity as well, I think. I don't know how many episodes they've ordered. I imagine it's sort of 8 or 10 for this, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, it's coming to Paramount Plus. So I assume that's going to run on Paramount Plus on over here as well, although, I mean, that's not always the case, as I said. That sometimes doesn't happen. It's a very interesting bit of casting. Jack Cutmore Scott, I don't particularly know. Deception was a sort of one season and done thing, and I've not seen Kingsman. So certainly Jack looks the part, definitely. I mean, they looks kind of similar to Kelsey Grammer, a young version of Kelsey Grammer, so I think that works quite well. We don't know when that's going to land yet either, but we'll keep an eye out and let you know more when we know more. There was a couple of interesting faces coming up in a new comedy ordered for Hulu, so presumably it will end up on Disney Plus over here, but it's called Second Wife. It's created by Tell Me Lies showrunner, exec producer Megan Oppenheimer, who also happens to be Tom Ellis's wife, and Tom Ellis is the lead in this alongside Emma Roberts. So I wonder how he got that gig. But
it's who you know.
Yes, it's a half-hour project. It's described as a darkly comedic story with the ups and downs of a blended family. Roberts will play Sasha, who flees from New York to London to start over after a terrible breakup. In the UK, she quickly falls in love with Jacob, played by Tom Ellis, a recently divorced father, and the two impulsively get married. They soon learn that there's a lot that they don't know about each other, and they can't outrun their pasts forever. So that's the setup for it. It's sort of half-hour dark comedy is basically the thing. Tom does comedy really, really well, and I think Emma Roberts is great as well. So I think that will be an interesting one. Ellis and Oppenheimer's first TV collaboration, so first time they've worked together. It's interesting. It must be weird when you're the exec producer and showrunner and you've just put your husband in a situation where he's basically going to be snogging Emma Roberts on screen. Which is a very bizarre situation to put your husband in. But anyway, Oppenheimer has worked with Roberts before through Tell Me Lies as well, which she also did. So I think it's a pilot at the moment because it does say potential series. So it may only be a pilot. It may not go anywhere, but that is another one coming. Any interest in this one?
I like both of them. Depends where it goes. It will generally depend on what it's broadcast on, whether I will tune in, because, you know, quick half an hour dramas, if I've got the subscription, I'll probably watch it.
Yeah.
And I have Disney at the moment.
Yes. As I say, it's pilot's been commissioned for Hulu, so it sounds like it will probably be Disney, but we'll see whether that is the case or not. But yeah, I like Tom Ellis a lot, and he does comedy very, very well. So we'll see whether that moves forward or not. But it's called Second Wife if you want to keep an eye out for news on that. That's all the news we've got for this week. Time to move on to some highlights for next week on TV. So, highlights for next week on TV. We have The Sex Lives of College Girls coming back for a second season. This will be on ITVX. I think they ran the first season on ITV2 because it was before ITVX launched. But that's coming on the 19th of January, so you'll be able to catch that. That 90s show coming to Netflix, which is the sort of follow-up to that 70s show, that is coming on the 19th of January as well. Also on the 19th of January, you've got Murdoch Mysteries returning for a 16th season on Alibi at 9 p.m, so that you can check out there. Truth Be Told returns for a third season. That's on Apple TV. That is the sort of true crime podcast person that solves actual crimes. That's on Apple TV. Stars Octavia Spencer, and very, very good show that. At 20th of January for that. Legend of Vox Machina, that lands for its second season on Prime Video. That's on the 20th of January. Then we have a couple of the big procedurals coming back. NCIS LA, that returns for a 14th season on Sky Max. That's on the 22nd of January at 10 p.m. Before that, you're going to have SWAT back for a 6th season. That's on the 22nd of January at 9 p.m. as well. And then over on Channel 4, we have a new comedy starting, which stars Simon Bird from, was it Friday Night Dinners, was it?
And The Inbetweeners, yeah. Friday Night Dinner, yeah.
Friday Night Dinner and The Inbetweeners, yeah. So Simon Bird is the head of a strictly religious family from Manchester who believes the world will end within the next decade. It's called Everyone Else Burns. It's coming to Channel 4, and that'll be on the 23rd of January at 10 p.m. You can catch that on Channel 4, so that could be quite a good sitcom to look out for as well. Any interest in any of that?
Well, I have been watching SWAT. I didn't like the start of the last season where we found him in Mexico, so I'm hoping they start this season better. The first time they've lost a cast member, they lost a cast member at the end of the last season. Right. I read a bit about it. The cast member had made the decision, whale in, and it was really journeyed out, and they chose how they left with the door open for return. So I will watch that, see how it starts, and Everyone Else Burns. I think I'll watch that as well.
Yes, yeah. I'm way behind on SWAT, so I think I'm back 2 seasons behind at the moment, so I will need to catch up on that. Yeah. I do need to catch up on Truth Be Told as well, because I that was a great show, but I fell way behind on that. Enjoyed some of the 70s show, but I don't know, 90s show just doesn't really appeal to me, so we'll see. Maybe Everyone Else Burns. We'll have a look. That's all the stuff coming for next week on TV. If people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Then come and follow me on Twitter at Gray the Geek. That's Gray with an A. And hopefully before the end of this week is out, my DragCon write-up will be onto the website. So fingers.
Yes, that will be good. And for other people involved in the show, you can, of course, find Bex on twitch.tv/Trista Bytes. That's BYTES. She's streaming daily and also has various evening streams. You can go and check out her stuff over there. It's usually quite a lot of good fun. She'll be streaming games and just chatting streams and all sorts of other mad silliness over there. Matt, you can find at Entertainment Talk for lots more podcasts, including their gaming podcast, their Manchester United podcast, and as I mentioned earlier, we will be doing The Last of Us as well, so we are going to be covering that over on there in more detail. And Daryl, you can find at HollywoodNorthNews.net for all those TV shows which you love, which are shot in Canada. For us, you can go to the website at geektown.co.uk throughout the week and see all the latest air date information. If you want to get in touch with your questions or comments, email us on podcast@geektown.co.uk. Leave a message on the website post. Find us at Geektown on Twitter, on Facebook at facebook.com/Geektown, on YouTube at youtube.com/Geektown, on Instagram at Geektown UK. That is everything. We shall see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.